So today we're looking at another segment of oneness, the principle of oneness. I stated a little bit last week how I look at it as the golden thread through human consciousness. And we're going to take further looks at that along the way, because I'm a firm believer there's one truth. There's just been many voices, many words, many ways to present it. And the principle of oneness is all about that. So we started here last week, and I think it's important. We have the opportunity, the choice in life. We've been given that free will choice to decide if we want to live as spiritual beings having this human experience for a period of 60, 70, 80, 100 years. Or are we human beings coming here today and having a spiritual experience? That's a choice that you and I get to make. And we get to make it every day. We get to make it every moment of the day. And with this principle of oneness, for me, is a guiding principle that comes through all the history of the enlightened ones, long before Jesus walked on this planet. But I use his examples because they're the most that we have, and they're the most that we're familiar with. And it's also the basis of what unity was based upon in the teachings of Charles and Myrtle Fillmore and Emily Cady and all the others, Eric Butterworth. But this for me was key, and I talked about it briefly, and I won't spend a lot of time on it, but this whole piece here in John is that glorify me as we were together before the worlds were formed. This is the piece that I contemplated for a couple months in my journey that allowed me to drop any fear whatsoever of death. Because when the scientists say this universe is 13.8 billion years or more, and there's been a perfect plan that got me to this moment in time, today. Whatever that divine plan is, I have no idea what it was and how it got me here, or you, but we're here. And it must have been perfection, because here we are. We exist. We're conscious that we are alive in this moment. And the second piece is when Jesus said, I and the Father are one. And we've talked last week a lot about this, and I'm just going to review quickly and then look how we add to it, because this oneness piece goes beyond just being one with the divine. There's levels to it, there's layers to it in the teaching that we've been given over 2,000 years ago. What did Charles say about this? One presence, one power, God's Spirit is the only presence in the universe and the only power. Now, you and I were raised not to believe this, most of us. If you were in any kind of formalized religion, you do not believe this. But whether you were in religion or not, you were taught not to believe in one power, one presence. And God is through and around all creation, all life, and is the power that holds that together. That's the belief in two powers that creates all human suffering. We talked about a lot of that last week, God and, right? It separates us from our source whenever we recognize a power outside of the one power and one presence. And there's many levels and layers of this understanding that we have that there's something more powerful than the divine, than source. And it creates all of our human suffering. Puts us all in bondage. I'm not talking about chains, physical chains. I'm talking about emotional and mental bondage. It all comes from a belief that there's something other than one power and one presence. It's the God and we talked about it, God and me. That's two, not one. It does not matter what you call it. You can call it the divine, you can call it consciousness, you can call it spirituality, you can call it God, the divine, or you can call it quantum energy. The name doesn't matter. The names change through history, but the golden thread is the enlightened ones understood that there's one power, one presence, and when you align yourself with that, something begins to change in your daily activity. Why? Because it's the highest vibration frequency that you can live at. I've been showing these energy vortexes long before money buy. We get to choose where we are on that vortex. And to get to this level, we have to be at the highest level and not participate in the low vibe energy, or we are disconnected from source. Now, Charles said this about consciousness. Is our knowing what we know? What does he mean by that? Consciousness is the knowing that you know, not that you think, not that you read, not that you go to a seminar or workshop. Your consciousness is what you know. Now, he said a whole lot more about consciousness, and it's so important that we printed it up and put it in your bulletin. I would invite you to take it home and study this. It's one of the best definitions of consciousness. I mean, he didn't miss much. As you can see, it's almost 2 pages. It's way too long to go through today. But take that pink or purple, whatever, with you. That comes out of the Unity's Metaphysical Bible Dictionary. It's word for word what Charles said consciousness is. And it really brings a whole new meaning, because this is the key for you and I, whether we're going to continue to live in this world or are we going to live in my kingdom. And the way we get there is through our own consciousness. No other way. God consciousness is not a choice, it's a state. It is, it exists. It has existed before time. Before the worlds were formed, we were together. This consciousness in you and me. Where is the choice? The choice is, do you want to live in it or not? Do you want to continue to live in your human stuff? Or do you want to go higher in the vortex and begin to live in God consciousness? That's the choice you and I make all day long, all week long, all year long. And if you continue to make the choices you made a year ago, you will continue to get what you did a year ago, or 10 years ago, or 30 years ago. And it doesn't matter how many years you were a member at Unity at Harrisburg, if you don't change your consciousness and align it with God consciousness, you will get the same thing you got 30 years ago. Same in the cathedral, same in the synagogue. It doesn't matter until you and I change our consciousness and go up the energy vortex. God is consciousness. There is essentially nothing else in the universe but. That's why I printed up those pages. The more and deeper your understanding of consciousness is, the more you can begin to see how it affects everything in the universe plus you. Out of 1 Peter said this, your life is a journey. You must travel with a deep consciousness of God. I'm calling it here God consciousness. You can call it many words. We talked about that last week. It can be Christ consciousness. It can be Atman if you're Hindu. If you're a Taoist, it's the Tao, T-A-O. The words don't matter. The words don't matter. What matters, the experience, the recognition of, is where the change comes from within you. I had somebody the other day said, I heard that they felt that I wasn't teaching enough unity. And I was like, what? So I had this incredible quote this week, came from Eric Butterworth. I don't know anyone more unity than Eric Butterworth. And his quote is this, all things are possible to God and to you in God consciousness. It is no different than what we've been talking about last week and this week. If you're not connected with the God consciousness within you, nothing changes. That's been taught from Charles and Myrtle through Eric Butterworth, and it's being taught today here, 2020, in Unity at Harrisburg. Because it's the only thing that matters. All the rest, to me, is noise. What did Rumi say? Those who are pure in heart achieve this state. You have your own definition of what pure in heart is. I don't have to talk about that. But you get it. You know what it is. You also know what not pure heart is. But those who are pure in heart will have the God consciousness. Those who do not will not. It's clear through Scripture over and over again. They are the truly and the actually aware of God at the center of their being, of their heart. This Rumi wrote this in the middle of the Persian desert hundreds and hundreds of years ago. There is nothing new here. The only thing new is if you choose to make a change in your consciousness. That's the only thing that can be new. There's nothing new in the truth. And the ultimate end of this journey, I love this slide, is merging back into God, an infinite ocean of consciousness and love. It doesn't get any better than this. And this is what Jesus tried to teach 2,000 years ago. You can have heaven now, he said, today. Not wait till you die and fly off somewhere, some hole in the sky somewhere. That is not truth. The kingdom is within you now. And the choice that you make every minute of every day determines whether you're there or you're not. No one else can do that for you. Not a spouse, not a minister, not even God. Because God already is. The question is, are you? When we're connected to this source in God consciousness, only now, and this is taught over and over and over again in Scripture, and somehow we have missed this, but only when you're in this consciousness, in this place, are you getting what Psalms 91 says, the protection and the blessings. Only then are you dwelling in the secret place of the Almighty, or abiding in, or one with, or called a child of God. Not before. So why wait? Why not? Because it's a choice you and I get to make every second in this eternal now. So last week I talked about this as a method. This is a method I use. It is not the only one. Find one that works for you if this isn't uncomfortable or it's not comfortable for you. And we talked about it. Close your eyes, go to the observer position 6 inches above behind, and watch yourself. And I'm using for God, Source, Spirit, Father, Christ Consciousness, the Tao, a bold capital italics I to represent. And for the humanness, I call it the little I with a dot. That's ego, that's humanness, that's the mask that we wear. And yes, we wear them to Unity of Harrisburg. Oh, look at me, how spiritual I am. And there may be something completely going on differently. This takes care of all that. It rips that persona, that mask off, and allows you to live in God consciousness. This is only one example. If it doesn't work for you, that's fine. Find one that does. And I said then we let it combine and take over and merge into oneness. It's a process. It's one I use over and over and over again every day. And we're going to add to that to the next segment as we go on. What else did the Master Teacher teach us about this? Seek first the kingdom. So I'm going to say seek first God consciousness and the righteousness, and everything else will be added to you. What's that mean? How much time have I spent and you spent chasing after all those things of this world? And the teaching here says you don't have to do that. Rest in this God consciousness within you. It will be added to you. I call it unfolds. It comes to you of the stuff of the world. Now this is where I make some people very nervous here, because it goes right up against the way you've been taught. And you were taught this way in Unity, I get that. But today we're seeing a whole different shift consciously. If that's true, that I only need to seek God consciousness and all the rest will be taken care of through divine design, which for me, when I look back and say in 13.8 billion years, it was perfect to get me to here. No longer need to pray for things or people. Why? Your Father, I'm going to use God consciousness, knows what you need before you think, before you ask. That's a level of faith and courage in the divine plan that goes beyond anything that I knew. And when I began to make this shift and drop those affirmations and those prayers and just connect with God consciousness, everything in my life began to take care of itself. My relationship's better than it's ever been. I'm in a home that I absolutely love. My finances are recovering with the locust aid. My health is fantastic. Why? Because I took that truth, seek first God consciousness, and let all the rest go. And that's my faith. Faith without works is dead. My works is I integrate this into my life, into my consciousness. I no longer affirm or pray for people or things. When someone comes to me and says, will you pray for them? I say, yes. What do? I immediately get connected to the divine consciousness. How would I know? I would not know how to pray for that person. That does. This is omniscience at work. We have used this word over and over again, unity, but we didn't put it to work. We didn't believe, we weren't willing to trust that there is an all-knowing, wise God that knows everything. And certainly doesn't need Dan telling him how to run the universe. Did it for 13.8 billion years before I was here. Did pretty good. We got here. Right? I am not that arrogant to think that I can know what to pray for someone. But I know where to go to where the source of omniscience and all knowledge is. If we're praying for something, it demonstrates, this is a learning for me in the last year and a half. It demonstrates a belief that God has been holding back on your good. If I'm praying for your health, that's a belief that God held back her health. I don't believe that's not the God I know. God is total health. If I'm praying for a new car, that's a belief that God held back a new car for me. He said, it's my greatest pleasure to give it to you all. All. How can I believe that it was held back from? That absolutely flies in the face of the true state. And it takes you and I out of oneness with the allness. Whenever you and I spend time and energy and thought and emotions out of truth, we are out of oneness with the allness. Because oneness cannot, with the allness, cannot be in an environment that doesn't match truth, ever. Now here's the next one that got me, big time. Therefore I say, take no thought for your life. Not what you drink, not what you eat, not what you wear on your body. Take no thought for your life. How much of your life so far have you taken about your life? Jesus said, take none. None. Zero. Now here's where my understanding of this is. This becomes true when I live in God consciousness all day long. But I have a journey that I'm on, and so are you. And none of us are perfect. But in understanding this, someone's, say to me, well, you mean don't go to the doctor, don't take medicine? I said, that doesn't mean that to me. What it means is I got to do what I am at wherever my level of consciousness is in this moment. But if I continue down this path, this is what's possible. there will be no disease, there will be no angst, there will be no disharmony in my life. And I'll be able to live from here. But in the meantime, I'm taking my vitamins. All right? Or whatever the medicine is, or going to see the doctor to get my x-ray. You got to take care of where you are in this spectrum. But I believe this is the place you and I can get to. As we continue to clean the wineskin and bring in more and more of the fresh spirit, we'll get to the place that we don't have to spend any time on this. Take no thought, no affirmations for. Why? Because there's no power in the human thought. We've been taught differently. Bill Gates has $60 billion. Bill Gates, with his mind, can't create a lima bean or a rose or anything with life. That is not what creates life. All the money in the world. And as we begin to make this shift away from me trying to figure it out, what I should pray for and affirm for, and get more and more connected with omnipotence, omniscience, and omnipresence. All knowledge and wisdom, one power, not two, one. It begins to flow through me and begins to manifest in my life. 5,000 years ago, Isaiah received this. My thoughts are not your thoughts. My ways are not your ways. This is 5,000-year-old wisdom. But if we align ourselves with all wisdom, we will know what the correct thing to do is in every day that we move in our lives. This is the other one that's been so powerful for me, because I struggled for years with where was God in the Holocaust. Because there isn't a people on this planet who don't pray more than the Jewish Hebrew people. Where was God while 6 million were murdered? Where was God while we had slavery in America? None of it aligns with God. And God gets credit so many times for all the things that screw up. But he says very clearly, my kingdom is not of this world. God wasn't in the Holocaust because it was of this world. If God had been in the Holocaust, it wouldn't have happened because God is love. And this began for me to understand, because I kept wanting God to come in the middle of my world. Anybody else ever did that? And he wasn't showing up, and I'm like, well, why not? Because it's not in this world. It's my kingdom versus this world. And you and I get to choose. Which one are we going to live in? This world or my kingdom? No longer prayers, this is me. No longer do I have prayers or affirmations for healings. Why? God is health. No longer prosperity. Why? God is prosperous. All you have to do is go to the beach and try to count the pebbles of sand. Or look into the sky on a clear night in the wintertime. How many stars? You can't count them. Abundance and prosperity is the natural event that you and I have, all of it, if we want. I don't pray for happiness because God is joy. If I'm aligned with God consciousness, joy will overflow my cup. It's the promise. And I don't pray or affirm for peace because God is peace. Peace, love, and joy are the three largest of spirit. So do not judge according to appearances, judge with the righteous judgment. Appearances is what you can see with your five senses around you in this world. He says, don't judge there. Go higher. Transcend that into God consciousness. And that's where my peace, my love, and my joy exist. And can be yours and mine here in this moment. This is a common teaching. Anybody ever hear this? We're made up of spirit, mind, and body. Spirit, mind, body, God. That's not oneness. That's fourness. It's true in the human, but it's not true in the spiritual. It's not true in my kingdom. It's one. We're told by Paul in Philippians, I believe it is, let this God consciousness that was in Jesus be in you. Let this God consciousness that was in Shankara, let this God consciousness that was in Buddha, let this God consciousness that was in Krishna and Lao Tzu be in you. The consciousness that was in Eric Butterworth and Myrtle and Charles Fillmore be in you. There's one God consciousness. One mind. Omniscience is yours and mine if we get out of this world and begin to be in my kingdom. Your body is the temple of the Lord. How many of you going around talking about your body? My body, my knee hurts. That is not one. That's God, consciousness, and knee. And I believe as we make this transition to God consciousness, we will begin to live, and what we talked about, that we'll never have to take any thought for that knee again. But right now, I got to put some Bengay on it. But as I raise my God consciousness, it will go away, I believe, because there is no bad knee in God consciousness. There's only perfection. This one always bothered me. I died daily, and I was like, well, how do I do that? What is it talking about? And here's my understanding of it. The little I with a dot must die daily. The mask of the persona, the ego, the humanness, the consciousness, that has to die to allow the capital, bold, italics, I, consciousness, to manifest and move out. Little I no longer have a mind. There is only God's mind. Little I no longer have a body. There's God's body. Little I no longer have a life. There's God's life. This is oneness. Not two-ness, not fourness, but oneness. Now, I am one. And today what I do with this is to expand it now, so as we went through the process last week, once that capital italics big I is inside of me, then I let it expand through my body, through my mind, and completely expand into my energy field. Some people call it your aura. But that is the practice that I do so that my body, my mind, and my experience energetically is one with the one power presence and one mind. And we'll do that in the meditation. And to me, that gets me now to the place where I stand and you stand. Becomes holy. It's holy ground. It's sacred. Because God consciousness is manifest here on this planet. In this world. The I within you, seeking God, seeking peace, seeking joy, seeking love, is God. The I within you that's seeking this higher vibration, this higher way to live, different than the past, is the God within the very center of you. Let's go to stillness. Let's take a couple deep breaths. And I invite you to join in if it's if it feels comfortable for you. If not, use what you use to connect with the God consciousness, the divine within you. I always like to, with my spiritual eyes, look up for the light. And then I move back to the observer position, 6 inches above my head and behind. Why do I do that? I want to take a little I out of the way. For me, it's a symbol that I'm not in charge. I surrender Dan. Dan's ego, Dan's persona, Dan's mask. And allow that great big capital bold italicized I that represents God consciousness, Spirit, the Christ, the Tao, whatever word is good for you. And allow that just to come down through your being and merge at your heart. Feel the connection with the divine. It's got to be an experience. It cannot be human thoughts and feelings. It has to transcend that. Be still and know that I am God. I, capital bold italics, I am God. And now in the stillness, let that energy of that great big capital bold I expand into your energy fields through your body, through your mind. Most people's energy field is out at least to where their hands are stretched out. And in this silence, know that I am